right, so now we're going to do the other jam track, right? It's the E major minor mixing together. If you don't have the jam track, click the link below. There's also below that Marty's link, which is going to have an ebook that has the pentatonic positions in it as well. Once you click on the link, it'll be off to the right side. I think you get a little free ebook. It's got chords and scales and all that stuff. So click both the links. You'll get, all the info and the kind of theoretical knowledge and scale positions that you'll need. And then now I'm going to show you how to mix the two together, where I think all the gold is. It's my favorite thing, mixing major and minor together. Endless possibilities. So this one's going to be kind of some riffs on how to do it. And then the next one I'm just going to keep doing. I'm going to do a long lesson of just like a billion riffs. So check it out. I hope you enjoy it. Here we go. All right, so now we're going to fuse major and minor together. Now what I do is I think minor pentatonic shapes, right? My E minor pentatonic. And I fuse the major, E major pentatonic shapes over the top of that. Now remember, since they're off, so position 1 E minor is right there, position 1 E major is right here. So what's going to happen is if you're in position 1 of minor, position 2 in the pentatonic scale of major is going to be over the top of that, right? So you're going to start to get stuff like this, right? So if we have those two notes, those are minor, but if you fuse major on top of it, now you have same thing with the next string. Now, the major third is right there, and if you add the blues note on the G string, you're going to have, you get all those notes within that E minor position 1 box. Now, I fill in the rest on the D and the G, or the D and the A strings, right? A little passing tone in there, and then we got. So there, obviously I went into position 5, but let's just take it there, and we're gonna have 14, 13, 12 on the A, and then, right? So you start to get all these awesome notes. That you can use and do different styles of riffs. Now in this particular song, it has an E major sound to it, kind of a 1-4-5 blues progression, but I threw a D chord in there, which lends itself to E minor. And let me show you why. So if we went E, A, B would be our 1-4-5, but since I went, right, it still has that E major sound. But now, if you know E minor pentatonic, if you have a D chord and an A chord, you've got all those notes right out of position 3. Right? So you get this cool minor rock and roll sound over the top of a major chord progression. Now let me show you the difference between the two scales. I'm going to solo in major, and you can listen to what that's going to sound like. Strictly E major. Now I can do the same thing in solo E minor, and it's still going to sound good as well. So here we go. Both sound great. Now when you fuse the two together, you get magic, right? So here we go. get all these other options that are just so much fun. Now let's go over a couple of things. Now I descend a lot of times. Page style, right? So that's going to be 15 to 12. And then you're going to come back. So I'm 15 to 12, 15 on the B, back to E, and then do the... Now you can invert that pattern. So now I'm going to pull off, and now I'm going to do, instead of going here, I'm going to go to the 12. And do it more that way. So those are some of the approaches that I take, and then when you combine that with other notes, now what I did was I used those two patterns, and I added those other major and minor notes in there. So it's more like, right? So I just flipped those two patterns, you know, back and forth, and then I added major thirds in there. Or the blues note. Or we can go. So I do a lot of that. Now I also do a lot of stacking, which is hitting the notes right on top of each other. So it's like, right? So I'll go. So that would be 14 to 12 on the G. Go up to the D, and then back to the G, back to the D, and then I'll add in that major third there. So. Now you can also add in 3-note per strings, and those notes that I was telling you can fill in together. So I'll do it like that. I'll do the, you know, a la Paul Gilbert. So that would be 12, 13, 14 on the A, down to the D12, and then back. And then you can, where you're subtracting a note from the top string each time you go. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then break up the pattern. And right, so it's... Now when you hear it without the context of music behind it, it sounds like, that sounds pretty good. But when you play it over the top of something, the notes are going by fast enough to where it's just kind of catching the ear, right? So now you're starting to get all these other things in there. Now let's go over a couple bending ideas. Okay, so we want to do some major bends. What we can do is highlight an E major chord. And one way to do that is go to the E major shape, right, here on 9 and 12. And you're going to bend up the G string, 11th fret, a whole step, and you're going to grab this B note right here. And you can grab the E note as well with your pinky, so you get this sound. Now what you're essentially doing is you're bending this note to the major third. So you get, but you're bending into it. And then you can resolve back to E right there with your first finger. So we bent up, pick backwards, release the bend, and then hammer and pull off to E. And then we can do like the Hendrix. So that's hitting two of the strings together. So that would be the 9th fret of, say, the G and the B. And I'm hammering on and pulling off on the string above. So that would be the 9th fret and the 11th fret of the G. by hitting the 9th fret of the B as well. Do the same thing. And then coming in. Right, so we got. Right, so that's kind of a major bend. You can also do the bends right here. Same bend, but it's in a different spot. Which is cool because then you're near position 1 and 2 of E, or I'm sorry, 2 and 3 of E minor. So you got, right, that is position 2 of E minor. Position 3 is basically right where that came from. So you can get bends like this. Now if you use the major note on top of that, you can slide in on that note. So it's right, so I started on this note, which is the 6th fret of the G string. Now I'm going to make it more E minor, 3rd position. Bend that 8th fret. Now I'm going to go to this note right here on the G string rather than this note. So we started on this note. I'm going to scoot it up 1 to stick in that minor sound. So we got. Now that's all just an amalgamation of the other stuff I was doing, you know. And then I threw those chromatic notes in there. Right, so that would be 2, 1, open, and then I'm going to hammer on and pull off, kind of Stevie Ray Vaughan. 1st fret, pull off the G, and then back to the E. Right, so you can add that all into those bending runs, right? So we can do like, let's see here. We'll do some of those bends. So it's taking runs and just chaining them together. Now you got to remember one thing I really want to stress is learn the octaves, right? So if you do this riff, learn it all over the place. Right? So if you take that one riff that we did, and now we take another bending riff we did, you're starting to be able to combine the riffs together. Now, one last thing I want to stress, and I'm going to go over one more lesson of this kind of stuff because a lot of people I realize really like this kind of sound, and it's my favorite thing by far to do. So one other thing that we need to think about is when we're playing, and I'm totally guilty of this because I technically can noodle, right? I can move around and not lose the beat very often, but you got to pay attention to where the chords are underneath your fingers. So remember, learn those shapes of chords, whether it's the E shape, the A shape, or the D shape of the chords for each chord in the progression. So then again, A, all right? G, which we use when that key change comes up. So now it's G, A, E, and then G, A, and then right the 5 chord, the B chord. So learn where those three shapes or those three types of chords are all over the neck. And then when you're doing these positions and where they fall under what positions in the pentatonic scale. And remember, I think minor, so I relate everything to minor pentatonic. So I know that my E chord, my E major chord, is in position 2 of E minor pentatonic, right? Those notes. Right, so if we're going... The only difference is I add the major third. So now we get that. Right, and you get that kind of a sound. Now also, you know, you have the E shape, the A shape of the E chord. Alright, so we're in that A shape E chord, right? From the A string, we have the E chord right here. Or just imagine, you know, you're playing an A chord right here. Well, the root note is the open A string. You're taking this A shape and moving it up to E. Now that's an E note, but it's an A shape, right? So that coincides with position 4 of E minor pentatonic. Right? Also position 1 of E major. You can also do position 5 of E minor. Right? Now that's a really cool position when you fuse minor and major together because you get right? So you can do the cool half step bends on the 11th fret. And start doing stuff like that. Now in the next lesson, I'm going to do more of the riffs over the music, but I'll just give you some jamming ideas, right? And go over what we've done in a little outro kind of a thing.